University of Dice, Dave here. It's been a minute. I talk a lot on this channel about improving the journey of learning and growing as a player and hopefully a little bit as a person too. But it's important to look back also. Thanksgiving was just here, and that's a holiday that's all about gratitude, reflection, or recognizing some of the things we might miss when we're always looking on what's next. In Pokemon, we're also looking forward all the time. We're looking forward to the next set, the next meta, the next matchup, the next cup, chat, whatever. Some people ceaselessly think about the next rotation even when it's months away. We've all seen those discussions online. But this time of year makes it worth pausing and asking, how far have I come? And I think that's a good question because it can be hard to notice improvement while you're in the middle of it. And if you don't take a moment to look back, it can be hard to recognize that you're not just standing still, that you are making strides. When you're in the middle of grinding games, watching matchups, reviewing deck lists, progress can feel very slow. And sometimes it can feel invisible. Like you might look at results, but that only tells a very small part of the story. And many of you know that results-oriented thinking is a bad idea anyway. And if you don't, we'll probably talk about that in another video. The thing is, improvement often reveals itself only in hindsight. It's kind of like that quote in The Office, right? Did you ever wish there was a way to know you were in the good old days while you were still in them? Well, it's hard to see the improvement without that same benefit of hindsight. You look back on plays that used to confuse you or lines that you never saw before, and you think, how did I ever miss that? And that's growth you couldn't see until you were past it. When I first started playing a little over a year ago in fall of 24, I started with the Tank Terapagos list as it was back then. There was the Terapagos, Bouffalant, I think Pidgeot was in there. There was a Dusknoir line. I could run the deck, but the deeper lines, the sequencing, the importance of prize manipulation, all those sorts of things, it just wasn't there. I didn't have it. I wasn't awful, but I would go like 1-1-1 at every event. I was pretty much like straight up even. I'm very lucky to not start out the gate like just basically losing across the board as a brand new player. I think having other TCG experience really helped with that, but I wasn't there. But then in the spring, the archetype kind of came back around. And this time without the Dusknoir, but the Tank Terapagos was there. And at that point, I had a whole lot more experience playing decks with the Owl engine and all sorts of things like that. So I picked it up again. The same core idea, similar strategy, but now I'm different, and suddenly things are obvious that weren't obvious before. There are card interactions that just kind of clicked now. There were sequencing choices that just felt natural and things that I could be like, okay, I need to do this now. And the kinds of things that I struggled with before now felt possible. And I took it to a league challenge and I won. And that was my second ever win at a championship point event. It wasn't the deck that changed, though. Yeah, it wasn't identical. It was me that changed and grew. And that's the kind of growth you can only really appreciate by looking back. So if you take inventory of your progress, you can recognize your achievements instead of just chasing the next one. Because if all you're doing is chasing the next thing, it can be hard to build confidence. You need to acknowledge your growth, right? You need to identify what worked in your improvement so you can lean into that and do more of it. When you just look at these tasks that we put out there for ourselves as boxes to be checked off, you really can remove the feeling of progression, especially when you start to have strings of success. Good performance starts to feel routine and makes bad runs feel worse than they actually are. You can get to a point where you're not really celebrating your wins, especially a hard-fought win. You just like, oh, well, that was what was supposed to happen. I was supposed to win, instead of like, yes, I saw that. I did that. That was really good of me. I think back at Tiger Woods when he was starting in golf. It was like a big deal that he was doing these fist pumps and reacting in a certain way that the golfers just didn't do. But there is something to celebrating those incremental successes. There should be some satisfaction there, and we should allow ourselves to feel that, though we also don't want to use your manners, right? So this way you can stay motivated during plateaus. You can feel gratitude for the journey and not just the result. You may not be where you want to be yet, but you're definitely not where you started, and that's really important to recognize. So this holiday is a chance to slow down, appreciate your journey through the game. Be thankful for the misplays that taught you how to not misplay, the decks and matchups, whether you played them or whatever else, the things that frustrated you, the players who challenged you, the days you almost gave up maybe, and those victories, big or small, that prove you're improving. Because every single one of those things is a sign of the player you're becoming. So allow yourself to look back. Notice what you understand now that you couldn't have understood before. Appreciate how far you've come, because the progress you've earned is worth celebrating. And the best part is, you're still getting better. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.